feminism, theology, and the afterlives of Martin Buber's dialogical thought. So,
sorry about that.
No, I should leave.
God is even weaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the motive of the week is certainly belongs to it. So thank you everyone for these 2 days and for staying that long. I'll speak about femininity and Frauendenken in Buber's thought. I try to figure out what is the meaning of the concept Frauendenken as used by Buber, and for that I had to refer to Landau and Sussman, because we do not get enough of a definition from Buber. In 1913, Gustav Landau published an essay entitled Martin Buber, which was inspired by Buber's newly published book, Daniel, as well as by his earlier works on Hasidism. A famous line on the essay praised Buber as the apostle of Judaism before mankind. But there was also a more specific mission Landau found in Buber's writing, a mission of feeling and pathos. I quote, "There is a Rebbe in one of Buber's legends," writes Landauer, "who despite his wisdom and superior knowledge breaks into heartbreaking, uncontrollable tears, but through these tears elevates the souls of the community to heavenly clarity, sanctification, and unity," end quote. The tears of the Rebbe represented for Landauer a different kind of thinking and a different kind of redemption. They belong to feminine thinking, Frauenhaftes Denken. And Landauer continues, "Just as Buber is the apostle of Judaism before mankind, so he will be an awakener and advocate of specifically feminine thinking, without which there will be no renewal and rejuvenation of our solidified and sunken culture." And he adds, "Only when everything that lives as thought and spirit in all men, only when our abstract thought immerses itself into the deep ground of feeling to reconcile itself with it, only then our thinking will become deed, and only then true life will grow from the barren land of logic. And for this, the woman will help." Indeed, Landauer concludes, "Women will come and are already on their way to chime in with Buber's thought music," end quote. And this seems to me like Landauer's prophecy of our 2 days conference. The identification of Frauendenken with tears, feelings, and thought music may not seem particularly flattering. Buber, in fact, responded with some irritation to Landauer's review. I quote, "Only with respect to a specifically feminine thinking, I beg to differ sharply. I'm thinking of a line by Paracelsus, Spiritus crucifer nullus generis est. Spirit does not need to bear the cross of gender." For Buber, thought was a sexless activity, neither masculine nor feminine, but disembodied. Landauer, by contrast, insisted that thinking cannot be separated from gender. I quote, "Paracelsus' word strikes me as a beautifully articulated but false commonplace. Nothing in the kingdom of gender is without gender," he replies in a letter of March 1913. And he adds apologetically, I am, by the way, not sure that you have correctly read the passage in my essay. I did not mean to ascribe feminine thinking to you, but only the gift of awakening feminine thinking. The disagreement between Buber and Landauer, which was not the only one in their friendship as described in a deep sense by Pullman's 4, raises some interesting questions. Did Buber object to the notion of feminine thinking, or did he only refuse to be called a feminine thinker himself? Did Landauer read Buber as a philosopher who thought like a woman? Why did Landauer think that Buber's thought awakens feminine thinking? And what was the meaning of female thinking or Frauendenken? In the remaining minutes, I will first try to describe the counters of Frauendenken as Landauer might have seen them. I will then relate Frauendenken to what Buber in an essay of 1923 called Echte Frauenrede. The main themes I will focus on in these examples are relationality, maternal care, and peace politics. I cannot explore these in detail, but I hope to illustrate aspects in Buber's thought that might explain his latest feminist reception. Frauendenken. Buber responded to Landauer's insistence on gendered world by reminding him that the last chapter of his Daniel of 1913 actually touched upon gender and spirit. However, it was the unity of spirit that mattered to him, not its gendered division. I quote, "The truly thinking man must experience and live through feminine thinking, while the truly thinking woman must experience and live through masculine thinking. Each must find in the other its antipode in order to let the unity of spiritual life emerge from them." End quote. Landauer essentially agreed with Buber's position, noting, however, that the unity of human thought mentioned Denken was far from being realized precisely because, I quote, women thinking does not yet have a significant share in it. It is a thoroughly concrete question of the present, Landauer writes in a letter to Buber, whether for the sake of human thinking, a stronger prominence of specific women thinking within this human thinking is expected and desirable, end of quote. But what is specific woman thinking? Landauer gives us very little insight about the nature of Frauendenken. Yet he does mention figures such as Rachel Varnhagen, Bettina Armin-Berntano, and Margarete Sussman, thinkers, he writes, who are also doers of humanity, the doers of oneness and wholeness, because Frauendenken dwells in them vividly. Especially Sussman exemplified for Landauer, as he wrote in 1912, not only a formidable thinker, but also the female shaper of ideas and world orderer. And it was Sussman who gave perhaps the most concrete meaning to Frauendenken. In the same year, as Buber and Landauer quarreled about feminine thought, Sussman published an essay on Martin Buber's Daniel, which characterized the author as a lyrical thinker, like Orpheus who descends into Hades with the full decisiveness of his heart. In one of her earliest monographs, The Essence of Modern German Lyricism of 1910, Sussman develops the notion of the lyrical self, which radically differed from the empirical subject. In fact, the lyrical self emerged only from the transformation, Verwandlung, even destruction, Vernichtung, of the empirical self. I quote, "It is not a given, but a created self. As such, the lyrical self has its share in myth. But while myth and all other forms of art are only external images, the lyrical work of art creates myth as the relation between the soul and the eternal from within itself. Thus, the lyrical thinker, and here we might think of Buber, can reconcile the loss of religion with deepest religiosity." In Von Sinn der Liebe, 1912, Sussman anticipates, in a way, Buber's Ich und Du, when she connects the creative lyrical self, which she also describes as singular soul, with the self as individual in relation to the otherness of the other. I quote, "Love is the incessantly burning feeling of being one that is relentlessly served and assaulted by the cruel feeling of otherness all around me. It is this Doppelstellung of the self that defines the individual, but it is the presence of the other, and Sussman repeatedly refers to the other as a du that allows for love to become the carrier of transformation and place the soul against the devouring forces of complete destruction. The soul, however, was, for Sussman, the symbol of the feminine. The soul, and we heard a little bit about that yesterday too, and also today. The soul differs from the masculine spirit, the Geist, whose image Sussman later describes as the self-sufficient tower that stands high above the surface on the earth. Unlike the spirit, the Geist, the soul is not directed outward, but a return to itself, a lingering in it, an absorption of the world inside itself. Its image is not a static building, but the mysteriously perfected butterfly that has wrested itself free from the gloomy night, again the motive of the butterfly. The difference between man and woman for Sussman was a difference not only of gender or nature, it was a difference of destiny. The way of man to himself leads through the idea, she writes in Von Sinn der Liebe. The way of the woman leads to the idea, to the whole, and it leads through the transformation of herself. This act of selfless transformation also connects to the woman's capability of giving birth metaphysically, which Sussman interprets religiously as giving birth to God, and existentially as the recognition of the other, the foreign, the living in herself. Maternity, thus, becomes a specific way of knowing or understanding, and it is the woman's task to carry this new understanding into humanity. The revolution of the woman, as Sussman puts it, is a call for the formation of a new humanness in concrete form, that is, the call for an understanding of the true historical task, the task for humanity to become human. True understanding of historical existence, she continues, means the transformation of ourselves. The idea of self-transformation, however, is rooted in the soul, in the feminine symbol, in the butterfly. And the butterfly is also the symbol of peaceful community, of a politics that has soul, that is bezert. Politics, writes Zussman in 1933, is of course the passion of the human soul, but it is also a searching through always crossed by grave errors and failures for the true goals of human community. If we follow Zussman, then we can identify three elements of Frauendenken: its relational or dialogical disposition, its maternal understanding, and its striving for a peaceful community beyond politics. These elements Landau probably saw realized in Martin Buber's writings, and it is perhaps no accident that Buber, 10 years after Zussman developed the image of female soul, would write in I Am Thou, the it is the chrysalis, the you, the butterfly. Echte Frauenrede. In 1929, Buber published an essay on wisdom and deed of women, Weisheit und Tat der Frau, which was dedicated to his daughter Eva, born in 1901. The essay is mainly devoted to 3 episodes in the story around King David. What Buber found in the first 2 episodes is the presence of 2 nameless women, whom the Bible does not record as protagonists, but who nonetheless have significant roles, for they speak what Buber calls true and immortal Frauenrede. In the first episode, King David's general invites a wise woman from Tekoa to persuade David to lift the exile of Absalom. Pretending to seek protection for her own son, who allegedly had killed his brother, the nameless woman secures the king's promise that her son would remain unharmed by blood vengeance. At this point, she is transformed from actress to a motherly prophetess, speaking to the king face to face and accusing him of mistaking the law of the institution for the law of the situation. True law, she reminds him, is the law of mercy. And she concludes with what Buber calls Ur-Frauenspruch, the Ur-Mutterspruch. As long as God has not ordained death to a man exiled by men, God himself cares about this man, cares about leaving the one expelled by law and society in the face of divine mercy. And here the woman is transformed the third time into a woman of tears and passionate gesture. In a second episode, a nameless woman from the rebellious city Abel demands to speak to David's commander Yoav, who had laid a siege over the city. The city you seek to destroy, she says, is a city of wisdom and counsel and reconciliation. It is a city that is a mother in Israel. Buber points out that the nameless woman uses the empathic eye to address a you in a dialogue that is really a confrontation. The city is called a motherly city by Buber, a city of the lovers of peace and the faithful, whereas Yoav is portrayed as a violent devourer. In the last episode, Ritzpah, the mother of 2 slain sons of Saul, whom David had handed over the Gibeonites, covers the dead with sackcloth to protect them against beasts. When David hears that Ritzpah has done what Ritzpah has done, he not only orders the dead to be buried, but also arranges for the remains of Saul and Jonathan to be brought together in a family grave. Only when this happens does the drought stop, which David had hoped to avert by ordering the sons of Saul to be killed. Also the Jews, writes Buber, have their eternal Antigone. In these three episodes, Buber portrays Frauendenken as a form of nameless but powerful speech that confronts the king or his generals by appealing to their conscience. The women use parables rather than direct critique. Only in the last story, speech becomes silent, and the appeal to David's conscience is made by action alone. Remember that Buber calls his essay Weisheit und Tat der Frau, emphasizing the fact that Frauendenken is not only about thinking and theorizing, but a practice that has the power to change politics and history. Margarete Sussman wrote after World War I that if women all around the world had been given a voice, they would have prevented this inhumanity. We know, however, from recent history that women's voices don't necessarily mean more humane politics. But we can also appreciate Landauer's, Buber's, and Sussman's search for an ethics of care and a maternal politics or anti-politics, which, whether feminine or not, is a task that continues to concern all of us. Thank you very much.